let me do that. So I'm Veronique. I'm all the way from South Africa. Basically, I am a practicing attorney here in South Africa. So I practice law, and our solution is I also work for myself. I'm an entrepreneur, and we have a solution called Legal Ascend, and it's basically an online guidance tool to help family members to be able to navigate through the what we call the admin after death process, because a lot of people in our country, the ordinary South African does not necessarily understand that process, and many people try to do the process themselves, but then get stuck along the way. And they're also sort of limited by resources. So many, our focus is sort of targeting the lower income groups, which is many here in South Africa. So yeah, our solution is really a legal tech solution targeted towards the masses. I hope that sort of sums it up.
Sure, sure. And I'm sure it will become more clear as we start to talk about the specific problem that you would like help with. So what do you want to, what would you like to work on today as far as wireframing, and how can we on the design side kind of help your, the problem that you're facing?
Yeah. So design is really a challenge for us at the moment. First and foremost, I need to sort of add that this myself, being a lawyer, sort of trained in law, the tech space is really something completely new. Everything that we know up until now has been either through making a whole lot of mistakes or what we've sort of learned via YouTube and sort of, the content that is out there, which is a lot. And so it's been a interesting journey. And so in terms of design, we've definitely, been sort of challenged in that area, specifically looking at our landing page that, if I'm honest, and I think Jerome can attest, sort of is not the greatest at the moment. And so we've sort of embarked on this journey of wanting to improve that so that it speaks to our customer, it speaks to the problem that we're trying to solve. And it also sort of tells our customer what we're all about and how we intend to help them. So that's sort of what we've been busy with, trying to do some lean experiments to see if we can, get that right. We've also, and you'll notice in the notes that I've sent you, is mainly focused on the landing page, because I'm also mindful of the time that you can probably only do so much in an hour. But what we've sort of discovered as we have been delving into our landing page is sort of how important just the whole UI UX sort of experience is, even inside the app, like for the functionality that we already have. And certain things that we thought had been sort of, it's easy to understand. And when we sort of show people, and then they're like, but is that really a given, fact that people will just grasp that concept? And so, yeah, really looking into understanding the sort of space a bit more in detail and understanding the importance thereof. So I think that's what we really been trying to do. And so out of the session, we really hope to just sort of like learn more within the space tools. I mean, my understanding is that, you have a tool to be able to assist when you're in this predicament that we are in at the moment. And just also, I think what is really interesting for me as sort of the founder is, like, you have all of the ideas in your head and sort of functionality, and I think that you want to see in the product. And we're a small team, so now to articulate that, I've many times used different types of formats, and all of these formats have not necessarily worked as well to articulate all of the things that I have in my head. So yeah, hoping that you can shed some light and maybe share some tips.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll first start by saying that you're not alone. Your story is very, very common, very familiar. I feel for you. It's very frustrating when you have this idea, you have a vision, and it's going to be helpful, and then it's just having to execute it. It doesn't seem that hard, but there's so many steps, so much to learn. There's such a huge gap between this great idea and actually getting that perfect thing in the hands of the people who need it. And all the things you've mentioned so far are the right things to do, reading up on things. I heard you say that you've been doing some lean experiments, which is great. Just assuming that you're not going to get it right the first time, trying things, seeing what they work, recognizing that people are not going to understand it right away in the way that you do instantly. So welcome to the world of being an entrepreneur. I think that's what this really is. Yeah, so I can help you with some wireframing, which is really meant for exactly the position you're in, where you have this idea, you want to try out a bunch of different concepts in a way that's very easy. It's easy to try different things, kind of formulate things and just get something down on a screen that you can show people and different variations on. There's a couple of different things that you mentioned. I mean, the landing pages are hard. They're hard for everyone. How you condense your message, your value proposition into the few seconds that somebody's going to give to this page before they go and get distracted by, YouTube or TikTok or something. How do you really tell people that this is what they're looking for? So a lot of that is wording, is understanding who your users are, how they think. But then there are also some things you can do on the user interface side to make it approachable, understandable. So maybe we can start. How about this? How about if I share my screen and you can send me we can look at some links for what you have already, and talk about what you do and you don't like about some of your landing page ideas. Does that sound good? Let me share my wireframing screen. So here's our tool. It's called Balsamiq Wireframes. It allows you to draw user interface components. This is just some of the text that I've added from our emails, but we'll see how it looks shortly. Let's see, do you want to tell me the links for, or paste them in the chat for your existing sites or some of the pages that you'd like to work on?
Yeah, you can take a look at our current, this is the third iteration. And actually Jerome is busy, I don't know, busy with the fourth one that we were supposed to publish, but this one has a carousel and we sort of learned that doesn't work well. You could see it's not really so much on design focus, but more on the functionality, trying to see what the call, I think for us, it was about seeing, what would be a call to action that will draw people in. Mm-hmm. And because our product focuses on death, I don't know about, in the States, but like here in South Africa, it's really a topic that people don't really like to engage in. So it's really difficult to capture them normally, like from a Facebook or from a social media perspective, and then sort of like guide them to your landing page, because they sort of like, it's a taboo type of topic. And so what we tried here was to create these personas that has specific problems, and so that when you get onto the site, you would resonate with some of the problems, because that might be you. And then our whole idea, as I said in the beginning, Legalism is an online guidance tool. And so imagine, and if you click on, for example, Let's Guide You, this is just what the concept that we were trying to play with. So if you click on that Let's Guide You button, the whole idea is for them to be able to get to this place, and this is really, really rough, to get to this map type of thing, where we would showcase the whole process to them, but sort of prompt them to start at the beginning. And when they start at the start, which is step one, because in the actual app itself, there would be the different steps of the process that they would follow, and we would prompt them during those those different stages. And so we wanted to get that same sort of feel on the landing page, which is probably, I don't know whether that is something that is a standard that people actually do or not, but we just wanted to play with that idea. Given the resources that we have at the time. And so, yes, I think if you go through this process, then what you would find is sort of a document that you can download. So we wanted to test whether people would actually want to actually go through this rigmarole. And then we learned people don't really want to go through a rigmarole. They just want to get to whatever they want to get to. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what we have at the moment in terms of the landing page. We also have, you won't see it here, it's on our 4th iteration. So we created this online calculator where people can actually calculate the value of their estates, which is an important aspect in actually starting the process. So we wanted to give these free things like the manual that will tell you what the process is, and this online calculator that will basically get you to come to our landing page. Yeah, and then we also realized that people want to see how do they contact us beforehand. They don't want to see it like towards the end, which if you had to go through this whole process, you would have only seen our contact details towards the end. So we were intending to bring that forward as well. And so, yeah, that's just in terms of sort of the basic concept that we're wanting to achieve, is for them to almost just feel like they're being guided through the process, and then they're getting information as they go through the steps.
Right. You want them to feel like they're working towards something. There's some reason to stay engaged and keep working on it. There is a lot to unpack there. So you said something about 3 distinct areas or something. Can I just make sure I understand those? The first one that you offer is an explanation of what the process is. The second one is this online calculator. And the third one is a way to contact you if they want more help or if they need help understanding it.
Yes, in respect of the landing page, that would be the main things, the main themes.
Okay.
That's correct. And yeah, and we recently sort of decided to also put a blog by the other people that are players in the, like, from the traditional sense. So we really want to punt sort of the informational, educational side as well. So one of the ideas was to have like a blog, but what I found is like other people have academies and things. Maybe it's a bit big for for starting out, but have the educational aspect in there as well.
Yes, I agree that can be helpful. Let's focus on those first 3 things that you said. I have a question about how to contact you. Do you have the resources to support that? Is that something that you really want people to do? I mean, because it sounds like a lot of the things on there are the website or the app is intended to help them. So if that seems too complicated, then they might just contact you and then you have to guide them through it. Is that something that you want them to do, or would you rather have them be able to do everything in the app itself? Is the contact you kind of a last resort thing, or is that an equal option to some of the other things?
That's a good question. I think in respect of them, obviously with the landing page, we want them to sign up as customers to actually utilize the app. To contact us would be, I suppose, more of a last resort. I would want the landing page to be of such a nature whereby everything is quite clear, so that if they do contact us, it would be like via WhatsApp. Because in South Africa, a lot of people use WhatsApp, and it's just, again, to give you prompts, not necessary to do the service for you. So what is really important is to distinguish that this particular tool is in fact a tool and it's not necessarily a legal service per se, because I think that's something that can very often get confused. because now the expectation would be, no, I'm going to get a lawyer necessarily that's going to like do the process for me, whereas this is not it, you know, like the tool will be there to guide you throughout the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this landing page really it has a lot of jobs to do. You know, first it has to explain to people what it is, that it's not just a legal service, that it's a tool to help you. It has to explain the value that it provides, what it can actually do for you, what problems it can address. So it makes sense that this would be a challenging process, because you need to convey a lot of information in a short amount, you know, with people's short attention span. This online calculator, so that this is a way to kind of entice people or get people interested in your app, because it will show them like a financial benefit of using it.
The online calculator is more like if you are in the process, or you obviously if you're starting the process, you don't know anything, and this is what we sort of found, that people don't even know like who the players are. And so the calculator's whole role was to be able to, because one of the steps requires you to actually do a calculation to be able to see if the value of your estate is over a certain amount. I think I worked it out in dollars. If your estate is over $17,000, then you need to do this entire, if you look at the map, you have to do the entire process. But if it's less than that, you only have to do step one. And so one of the critical questions in the beginning is, what was the value of the estate? And the other question is, did the person have a will? The value of the estate is critical because it will determine what process you need to follow.
I see.
You see, and so that's why we thought, okay, if we bring this calculator into the play, people would be, you know, wanting to find out like, wait, what must I do? Yeah.
Got it. So the result of that is basically going to tell them how easy or difficult the process is going to be.
Exactly. So that they can have a clear view in terms of what is expected going forward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think is the best place to introduce that, the calculator? Should that be at the very beginning before they even begin the process, or should that be once they've started the process, and it will help them then tell them if it's going to be the short version or the long version?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, if I'm honest with myself, it's probably when they start the process, as opposed to they first need to understand what the process is to be able to probably utilize the calculator to its fullest. So just to bring out a calculator, they're probably not going to get it until they get what the process entails. So I would probably say at the start of the actual process. Yeah.
Okay. So let me start to write some things down and see if I'm understanding things correctly. So I'm thinking about the goals of the site. The first goal might be to help users identify, is this tool right for me? Am I in the right place? And then maybe the second goal would be to at least begin the process. And then maybe even a separate goal is kind of like provide help or assist through the process, you know, in case they run into some challenges or something like that.
Yes.
So it needs to communicate some information to make sure that somebody knows that they're in the right place, and then it needs to help them actually start to do the thing. Would you say that those are kind of the goals of this landing page?
Yes. Is the tool right for me? And then, you know, start the process and provide to be able to like sort of help them in between those areas. Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump back to this. I like what you've done here on this carousel page, not so much for the UI itself, but for the fact that this is it's a very compelling message. I'm not a marketing expert, but I have done quite a bit of research, or I've learned quite a bit recently, and that photographs are very powerful, personal stories. I think somebody who has just recently experienced a death is going to be in a very, emotional state, or they're going to have a real story and have something that will. So this kind of combines both photography that shows, humanity with quotes that tell real stories. I think this is really going to help connect with the people who are in this position. So I think that is an excellent start as far as content. You can kind of think about the content from the layout and the interface separately. So, it's much better to start with this content, and then we can design the page around that. So we don't need to be confined to this carousel layout. This is kind of the user interface element of it. But the fact that you have pictures and real stories, I think, is a really great way to connect with people. I like that this up here is kind of a very clear, concise statement about both who the audience is and what the reason for this site is. So this is very good. I'm sure you worked very hard on coming up with these stories and this text and this wording. That's very good. And I like that you have one clear call to action that says, like, okay, now that I know that I'm probably in the right place, now what? So having one step that says, let's guide you, or just one clear call to action. We can think about maybe the precise wording for that, or finding a way to help people understand, well, okay, what happens when I click this button? Is this, is it just going to send an email? Is it going to start this, because then it can be a little overwhelming if I click this and then it's like, whoa, what is all of this? So some explanation of what is going to happen when they click on that, but that's something that we can work on. So, let's start with this, and we can put a browser frame in here just to help us picture that this is going to be a website. It doesn't really matter so much how big it is right now. And then we are going to say put this text kind of in bigger letters at the top to just give people an idea of what the site is all about. It's probably going to be a logo somewhere, and then we will draw a picture here. Maybe it's useful to have some of these stories here. Let's do this instead, some of this text. So what we can do is just kind of use some placeholders here, so we don't need to worry so much about what the actual content is going to be just yet. I'm trying to think about a way to maybe connect the image and the story with the purpose of the site. So I'm wondering if, instead of just having the stories and then the call to action, maybe a connection between the stories and what this site is about, because you have a general kind of a phrase here that tells people, but then I think it would be good to add something that says, now what can this site provide? And it could be something like an overview of this, but I think there's two purposes that this can serve, or which you've kind of explained. One is to show them what the process is. And it's good to show all the steps so then they know kind of what they're in for, but you also want to make it seem like it's not too overwhelming. So balance out the thoroughness, showing the whole process without making it seem like it's too much. So kind of simplifying it somehow, but also showing what all of the steps are. So let's see. What do we say? Let's guide you. And this is, we're in very early phases of this, so I'm just kind of thinking out loud a little bit here about what we might be doing here. So I think we're gonna maybe have that. We have to have this call to action somewhere, and then I feel like there should be something that's basically like what to expect. That would be on the page. I'm wondering about kind of capturing this process in a visual way that maybe says, like, starts with "you are here," or just gives them a preview of it before they go into it. I wonder if we could do this here. And I'm thinking maybe this is just, let's see, this might be, step one. I wonder if we, let's see. I'm just thinking about if it's the right thing to start telling people about the process here. I think that there should be something before they begin the actual process that tells them, maybe it's even kind of an infographic, or maybe it's a larger image that shows the steps. You want to make the connection between, you want to really tell people that this app is going to help you go through this process. So it's kind of like, what is the process? And then also what we can do for you in the process. So instead of just showing them the process, show how you help them in each stage, or maybe what information they need. So instead of just telling them what the process is, telling them, getting them to sign up to the site is getting them to ask, they say, oh, this looks like an easy way to go through this process. So is there a way that you can communicate that not only we allow you to go through this process, but we make it easy, we guide you, what is the, what is a way of really compelling them or telling them that this is an easy way or an accessible way to get through this process. So rather than just communicating it, but what's a good way for you to show that this site is well designed or well thought out and is going to make it easy for them to go through this process. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I hear you. I think when we initially thought, about the process, so that the map that you see, or the interface that you see, is literally just a poster that we had, but because our design skills, we have it in our heads, but we can't necessarily put it down as we see it. But definitely, like, having this place where, this is where you start, this sort of where it ends, but not as heavy. And so I hear what you're saying in terms of outcomes, like, how do we, because what essentially our system will be doing is not only giving the information, but also giving the documents that you require. So filling in the documents. So it's essentially like a document automation tool as well, like, besides the fact that it guides you through the process. I should have mentioned that. So it actually, there are standard documents that need to be completed, and it actually helps you through a question and answer type of format to actually populate those documents accurately. So, for example, out of step one, there is, out of all of the steps, there's specific outcomes. So, for example, with step one, when you do step one, you're reporting, number one, the death of the person, but also number two, you're applying for what they call a letters of executorship. So it's to appoint somebody who's going to manage the process essentially on the family's behalf. And so I don't know whether it's too early to in this stage, and maybe, I mean, you perhaps have a bit more experience in that regard. I don't know if this is what you mean, but if we somehow had to like entice them by like telling them what they'll basically get inside of the app. So essentially, like, you know, you don't have to stress about filling in documents. The app is going to do it for you, and in all of these stages, that type of thing. I don't know. That's some of the thoughts that I have in my head. I don't know whether Jerome has different thoughts, but yeah.
I mean, I would say that that's very powerful. That's a very compelling message. And that, I think that's something that should really be upfront on the page. So, you know, explain what the site is about, kind of, you know, show people, help connect to people who are in that situation, and then make a very clear statement that says, we can make this easy for you. You have a lot to deal with right now. We can get you what you need in an easy, you know, in an automated way, so you don't have to do all this work. I mean, that's the real value add of the site, and I think that that should be a core part of the landing page message. I'm thinking of there are some, you know, one thing I always like to do is look at other websites, other examples that have something similar. This is something I used recently because I had to create some documents or something. And this is a site that helps you create legal documents. I think it's not exactly the same, but it is like, I don't know, all this legal stuff, you know, and I don't know if it's exactly like a step-by-step filling out the form, but it's like, okay, you know, what do you need? Oh, I need a will and trust. And then you go through here and maybe it tells you, I guess it sells you on the outcomes, or the, you know, what you get in the end. Maybe you know, in this case, you know what form you need. And then I think, well, I don't know, maybe this is a lot of steps because you need to sign up for something. But, you know, I think at some point it's kind of like a step-by-step fill in the blank kind of, you know, what is your, you know, the name of the person, and then the output is that document at the end. I wonder if, you know, so at the end, maybe what you could do is create some kind of illustration that shows them what they get at the end, to help them to say, so they can say, yes, that's what I need. Like, we will help you get there, rather than focusing on all of the steps. And then once they begin the process, you can kind of go step by step. But the landing page can be more about, we can help you get to this final step. Your real goal is to get this document, or whatever it is, or all your forms, you know, submitted. So this is the place to do that. So maybe rather than showing each step, show them what they will get as a result of using this product or signing up. Another idea I had is something I've seen in other places that they use to get people to start is they kind of put the first step on the process already. So, you know, when somebody's at the very beginning of this process, do they have some document, or do they have some information? What do they typically have to start with?
Yeah, depending on who it is, let's assume it's the surviving spouse. So it could be the wife or the husband that's left behind. They would have information. So they would have, most of the times, know whether the person had a will or not. And most of the times they would then know what the value of the estate, not necessarily like to the cent. They wouldn't necessarily know the value, but they would be able to say, okay, I have a house, I have a car, I have furniture. So then we would then be able to calculate the value. And that's where the calculator thing comes in. But essentially they would have some information to start off, or at least access to the information. If it's a child, for example, acting on behalf of a family, they would have access to the information. But yeah, critical questions is definitely, you know, the will and the value of the estate. And essentially, a lot of the people, I should probably not assume that they know what an estate means.
Mm-hmm.
So an estate is basically all of your belongings, if I just put it simply. So in legalese, we would say your assets, but even like that might be a bit difficult to grasp. So everything that you own, essentially, that is that that you have ownership of, that would fall into your estate. And the
Mm.
value of that, if you had to calculate all of that, that would then be equate to a value. And we would then work based on that value it would depend on what process then would have to be followed.
Yeah, I wonder if you can start giving people value right away, start giving them something right away and showing that. So give them a preview of what they get, kind of like you could have the landing page be the first couple of steps of the process, and to kind of like, so they can kind of just start clicking. And then once they've done that, then they're kind of invested in it and you're showing them what you offer already. So, you can provide some some help and show that, every question that we'll ask you, we will have an explanation of what this is, or maybe could have like I don't necessarily like this idea, but kind of an FAQ or a help section. And you said like, what is an estate or something like that. And show that that this is the kind of place that will answer all of these questions or something like that. And this may not necessarily all be on the landing page, but this might be provide some direction for when you're in the app itself, kind of like a step-by-step. And so maybe these first couple of questions could be like, are you ready to start this process? So if you are, if you don't have a will, or if you don't need this, then here's how to go get that information. And so you're already providing some help to get them started. So maybe think of a couple of things that you can ask them that they either know or don't know, or know easily. And then, then you can move this, a little bit later and say like, continue or something like that. So you're already providing some help already, rather than let's guide you and then have them, before they click that, they don't even know what they need to know, or what they don't know, or what they do know. So kind of like, if you give them a sense for these are the types of questions that we'll be asking you, then they're kind of like, oh, I have that. And they've kind of already started before they really started. And then you said, what was the second question you said about the state? Or what would be the second question, or another important question?
Yeah, the critical question is, I don't know, would you say, do you know the value? But basically, do you know the value of the estate? And is the value of the estate greater than 250,000 Rand, which would be the follow-up question there. So if they do, yes or no, know the value of the estate, then the critical thing is to establish if it's over 250,000 Rand or less than 250,000 Rand. So yeah. So that is like the critical things.
This could be a really good opportunity here to show how your site can help. Let us help you. So you're kind of already offering something here, and maybe they do know it, or maybe even you're kind of, this isn't the right thing, but I don't know if I know it, kind of a thing. And then have, or I'm not, or what is the value? Maybe you can say, what is the value of the estate? And then you could have something like, this and maybe some help on that field, or and then you could have this isn't quite right, but all this stuff can kind of be refined later, and then you can say, let us help you calculate, and then that could even maybe pop up the calculator over here or something like that, so that they get this immediate benefit. And you could have something here. It's basically kind of like, why does this matter? Or why
Is it
does
important?
state value matter? And you're kind of already starting to show them all the things that that could be helpful to them. And so maybe these first 2 steps are really a way of getting people started in the process and helping them, getting them started, and then answering these critical questions that once they've answered this one, then you can kind of get the ball rolling. And maybe it's not this process of like continue, but maybe, or maybe it is. I don't know. This is kind of the services. So this is not going to be the actual text, but this will be kind of maybe what this area is for example. And then this is your kind of your stories, so that the landing page serves these multiple functions. Let me change this to say that this is left to be filled in. And the reason why we think wireframes are helpful is because you can kind of have this mix of like, you can put parts of the UI together, but you can also just kind of like add text and comments to either communicate your thoughts or communicate with the people who are building it. Because at this point, this is not something you're showing to customers. This is something you're kind of working on internally to help you. And you can create multiple different versions and iterations and say, this is our first idea. Here's our, and then you can do a completely separate one. It's a different idea. And so you're really in the early stages. You're playing around. You're just seeing what might work. Let's say, okay, maybe we will keep this a carousel. I'm going to just put these little dots here to kind of like show that is what it's going to be. It's kind of condensed carousel or something. But it helps you kind of just see what it might look like, try out a few different ideas without really investing much in the in the code or whatever. What else? What do you think so far? Does this give you any ideas? There's some other things you would like to try based on what we've talked about so far? I know I've done a lot of talking. I want to let you maybe talk for a little bit.
I actually think this is quite good. This is getting started. That's what we're trying to do with the first steps on the map thingy. And I think this is good. Yeah. I don't know what you think, Varonique. Then we can have the calculators a pop up there. It's also something that somebody else also spoke about, like having the user give them access to the pre-questions early, so they can see what the tool could actually do, and doing it on the landing page. Yeah, actually, yeah, I never thought of it like this, but this is good with the FAQ that will explain the things that we always talk about. Very like, do they know what the state is? Do they know like why they need to know the value of their state? So the FAQ there, I think, yeah.
It gives me an
Yeah.
idea. I think it might be good, instead of having these links, you could just have the answers all on the page.
On the page, yeah.
Yeah.
But Veronique, what are your thoughts?
I think also I agree with Jerome in the sense that I think you laid it out very nicely, because some of these things are things that we wanted to do, but we didn't necessarily know how to now, articulate visually, like articulate those ideas to make it look. I mean, you clearly know what you're doing, because the way you just like popping the things up left, right, and center it makes it look so easy in comparison to what we try and do, I think. I would love to know, because there are two buttons currently, and what your thoughts are on like this, the CTA, the call to action button specifically, because we've really been like trying to learn more about different calls to action, and we've noted some of the sites have two calls to action, one always being like a contact us type of a button. So do you think like the Let's Guide You, because you did mention, having a single call to action is always or you at least said that is a good thing, but I would love to know your personal view on whether we, necessarily would then keep a Let's Guide You call to action, or whether we would change that to maybe something like I don't know, contact us or start. I don't know, because here we would then have the get started, and I'm assuming if you press continue, it would be like, continuing with the process, or maybe like getting into the app itself, So I don't know what your thoughts are in terms of specifically the call to action buttons.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm going to think about it now. I think when I was building this, and that's kind of one thing about wireframes, is I had no idea where I was going when I started, so it's like you're just talking it out, and then it kind of starts to come together. So I think, if I'm trying to remember what I was thinking, I think I still had in mind to have one call to action. I think I just ended up duplicating that button because it felt like there should be some call to action in the top half of the page, but it also felt like there should be something down here once you've started. So I don't quite know. I don't think you should have two call to actions, because I think if you have two calls to action, there should be a really good reason for it. So maybe you have like an auction site, and it's like, I want to buy versus I want to sell or something, and you have two clear divisions. I would say if you have a second call to action, it should be not as prominent. So like, or, maybe your second call to action is contact us or something. So maybe once you have it laid out visually, it would be something more like this, where you have it. So I think somehow Let's Guide You and Continue should be the same call to action. So I'm not quite sure how it works. Maybe clicking this button just jumps you to this part of the page, it scrolls down to this part of the page or something, or maybe this is not so much. Maybe this is a link or something that says like get started, and it's kind of, maybe it's a bolder link, but this is like, I don't know, it's kind of your like a weak call to action or something like that, but it's something that invites them in the top half of the page to do something, but really all it does is it just jumps to this part of the page. And maybe, you can, and this is kind of where you get into the UI part of things, maybe you can really have this almost look like it's like an embedded kind of widget, like it is kind of the app within the page or something like that. So it feels more like you're actually, how sometimes you put in like a Google form or something that's embedded in a page or something like that. So it makes it feel more like, this is the experience that you will get when you actually, start into the app or something like that. Whoopsie. Let's move into just back on. So so yes, I think that one call to action is probably good, but somehow you need to think about what that might look like with having something in the top of the page. Or maybe this get started stuff is up there. It kind of feels like maybe it shouldn't be, but these are the kind of things that you could kind of flesh out in subsequent iterations, or you can, there's this feature here to create an alternate version, or sometimes it's easier just to duplicate this and say, okay, now I'm going to kind of leave that one because I don't want to remove anything that I did before, but now I'm going to start on the next iteration and I'm going to move all this stuff up here or whatever, for example. So kind of create a stopping point and then try something new after that, or let's see what it might look like with the button versus this other thing. But the short answer is, I think in your case, it would be good to have one primary call to action that just starts the process.
That's very good. And then my other question is, because when we started, we spoke about telling them what to expect inside the app, right? So then we got to the what is actually like this get started part is actually in the app as well. It's what we call pre-questions to be able to. So our system uses those questions to be able to determine the process, and then it automatically knows what documents to fill in. So it is essentially an extension of the app, but now the customer would see it in the front. So that's why Jerome was like, yeah, we like that. But now my question is, in terms of like still telling them what else to expect, do you think like that's something that we should still then do like after that? Or yeah,
I think maybe. I think because you still have to assume that people are not fully on board with this yet. So it's, I think what we have in the page so far in order of priority is good. So first of all, they need to know what this is about. Second, they need to get an idea of what it will do, but they might still be like, well, I'm still not really sure what to expect or what this is all about. So, you could have that here, maybe you could start to kind of explain the process. Maybe this is a good point to have kind of a diagram with some arrow or something that's like maybe even you show how if the value is over a certain amount, then you go through this process versus this process. And at this point, you kind of have, this is your chance to say, okay, if you still don't understand things, or if you still need some convincing or whatever, let us explain a little bit more, and you can have a little bit more fun with it here. There's a little bit less pressure here because you've invested so much in kind of selling them or telling them what it's really all about up here. So and this might be something where you could talk to people. You could say, what would be most helpful if you're still not really sure? Do you want just a whole bunch of text? Do you want to start showing some of the documents? What would be, do you want to kind of ease their anxiety about, if they're like, oh, I'm not really sure if this site is for me, or I'm not really sure if this is going to help me with everything, or what else, what's going to happen after this, so you can kind of use this space to maybe kind of show them what the process is going to be, or you could have some testimonials, or you could kind of brainstorm about what are some other things that might be good here. Probably something that is a little different in feel. So maybe it's more visual. Maybe it's got pictures. Maybe it's got, more photos. Maybe it's a little bit more story driven, or maybe it's like about us, kind of like to show that, hey, we're not trying to get some money out of you here, or, show your face and talk about your stories, or, use some other information that's either going to serve some purpose. So maybe it's going to lend credibility to the site, or whatever their apprehensions or questions might be, then maybe you have this third area to kind of like address those. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, great. I think that answers my question. Thank you so much. I think you don't understand. We've been talking about this landing page, and we've been struggling. I'm not gonna lie to you, and we now have to look for somebody who can actually, bring this to life. But yeah, I really, really, really appreciate your time and just sitting with us and doing this. It really it means a lot for us, I think, and also just we're just happy to put it in context because yeah, we've had multiple conversations about this landing page and some of the ideas putting it together. But this was really easy, and I really really appreciate it.
Good, good. I always enjoy these, and I feel like sometimes it's really just about asking the right questions. You know, the kind of the once you answer the right questions, then the design kind of like takes care of itself, or then it becomes a lot clearer. So I think it's really good to start asking the right questions before you start kind of designing. All the design elements should exist for some purpose. So, you know, try get rid of this idea of what your website should look like, or think how it should, you know, the things that are visual or that about how it looks. You know, think about what are we trying to do, and then what's a way that the design can support that, or, you know, reinforce that. Everything on your page should really exist for a reason. That's kind of the one thing I would want to leave you with when you're continuing, because, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, unfortunately, but I think hopefully this is a good start. And I think
definitely
there's a lot of good reasons for people to use your site and your app. So I think that's really good. And so hopefully this will be a good start for you.
It is a great start. Thank you so much.